Hello, welcome back, everybody. This is the Reindeer's Bees YouTube channel. My name is Rainier, and tonight we're going to talk about honey flows, weather, and queens in Maine. So today is June 9th. My plan for tonight is to go to 30 minutes. If there are enough questions in the chat, I'll keep going till the questions are answered. So I think I'll just start it off with our weather and our flows because those are deeply entangled. So lately, we had a good honey flow on, a great honey flow on, till last Friday. The rain started. We had some thunderstorms, and we got about zero point 0.8 inches of rain. And if you're a newer beekeeper, you may not know this, but rain during a honey flow stops it cold instantly. So it's tough sometimes when you get rain during a honey flow because it may extend the life of the honey flow, but in the short term, it kills it. It's just not as good. But overall, the bees were doing really, really well before the rain and starting to pack away that honey. I had a video coming out. I think I'll probably put out a short of a hive that already made, maybe half a super of honey or three quarters, 20, 25 pounds. And hopefully I'll make two or three more supers. We'll see. You just never know. But the honey flow was going great till last Friday, which I guess was June 2nd. And then we've had rain, 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 and more rain. So we have a low pressure system over us here in southern Maine. I'm about an hour north of Portland, mid coast Maine. And that low pressure system is just constantly not dumping, but small amounts of rain, which just kills honey flows because it's too cold. It's like 60 degrees. And then it also rains a little bit, which washes the nectar and pollen out of the flowers. Um, the blackberry and the raspberries are so good at producing nectar that the bees, like yesterday, I was shaking tons of nectar from the frames, but that is by far the exception and not the rule because it was 60 degrees and it had rained pretty not long before that. But the blackberries and raspberries creates so much nectar for the bees. It's crazy. I got another round of queens going. I grafted 60 queens on Tuesday this week. I wanted to graft last Saturday or Sunday, but the rain kept me out from doing it. Anyway, so I grafted and 60 cells, and I got 54 out of the 60, I believe. Yeah, I think it was 54 or 53. So I need 40, and I'd like to sell 10, and that gives me a breathing room with 3 hives. I'm really having trouble finding frames of pollen for my cell builders. So I used 2 frames that had a small amount of pollen, and then yesterday I found another frame full that had more pollen from one of my hives that I was making a video in, and so I dropped that into the cell builder. They used all the pollen from the other frames, and new beekeepers probably don't know this, but frames of pollen are the most important thing you need when you're rearing a lot of queens at one time, because naturally the bees, I mean, in very extreme cases, sometimes they'll make like 15 or 20 queens if they are a strong hive and their queen dies and they need to make a queen, emergency queen. But typically it's only a few cells, so bees aren't really meant to raise, 54 queens. And so you need to have set up certain conditions so there's a lot of bees to feed those developing queen bees. You also need to make sure that there's lots of pollen. So the most important thing is having a pollen frame full of pollen directly next to the grafts. And so I wasn't able to find a frame of pollen because we haven't had good weather for the bees to forage for pollen. So they haven't stored away much pollen. But thankfully, I was able to find a frame of pollen. And after the grafts had gone in, and so once they ate up the 2 frames they already had, I dropped in another one, and that should be good because they only feed them for like 4 days, give or take. And 54 out of 60 is pretty good. I forgot to do the math, but I think it's like somewhere in the low 90s. I did better last time. I got 57 out of 59, but you're never going to be that close to perfect. It's very, very unlikely. Hopefully on that last graph, they'll go 60 for 60. That's the goal. But queen ring's going all right. Pretty good acceptance. Honey flow is not on. And the forecast is rain, rain, rain. So it will not be going for a while. There's rain predicted through next Thursday, so at least for the next week. Thankfully, though, from what I understand, the low pressure system is keeping the smoke from the wildfires in Canada from drifting down here to Maine. Um, and I saw someone say that bees can't fly when the sun is blocked out by the smoke because it messes up their orientation to the sun, which is how they travel, which would make sense. But it does leave one question in my mind, which is like, if they can't fly when there's smoke, why can they fly when it's cloudy? But maybe someone would be able to answer that in the chat. That'd be interesting to know. So we're spared from the wildfires because, if the smoke's up in the sky, I saw some videos from, I think, New Jersey, and the bees just don't fly. Even if it's warm enough, they just don't fly when there's not much smoke. So that's how things are going. I checked all my hives. I've got 21 queen castles going, plus 8 nukes. One of them's laying worker, and I'll shake them out tomorrow morning. I've got 12 queens for sale. Well, 11 now. I sold one. So if you're interested in queens, you can email me at reindeers.bees@gmail.com or DM me on Instagram at reindeersbees. So if you're interested in queen buying, I've got 12. They're $45 marked, or sorry, $45 unmarked and $50 marked. They're carniolan hybrids. I grafted them off of one of my favorite hives. They're exactly what I'm looking for because they were smaller, smaller, smaller. And then once we hit like second week in May, they've been my best hive ever since. They've far performed all of my other hives, way outperformed. So they're exactly what I want. They conserved food very well, and then they absolutely exploded, and they're still going crazy even with the bad weather. So I'm really excited about grafting off that queen. I think she's really a special queen, and yeah. So her mother's kind of has carniolan archetypes. I think she's also jet black as well. So she's, her phenotype's also carniolan. And I'm splitting this weekend. I'm trying to make, I think it was 11 more splits because I'm trying to get to 40 nukes total, counting the queen castles. So I'll be taking frames of brood from my 4 splitting hives, my 4 splitting hives, my 7 splitting hives, 3 frames of brood each. So I'm trying to find 21 frames of capped brood, and I'll make nukes. If there's frames of honey that I can use, then great. If not, I'll feed all of them right away, and so they won't starve. And that's kind of the game plan. I'm trying to get drone mite washes done. It's new research published by Zach Lamas. He suggests you do a mite wash on the drones instead of the worker bees, and so I've fitzed around with that. And my first drone wash, I rolled a 0, so I thought it could be a fluke, but I'm still figuring it out. Then my second one I did, I rolled a 1, which there's no current standards for how many mites per 40 drones that you wash, like how many mites you get to what you should treat. So I'm still figuring that out. So I'm just comparing all my hives, and I'll decide by that. So I tested a 1 and a 0. I want to get my other, 11 colonies done, and just kind of see where they're all at. If they all test really low, then great. If most of them test between 1 and 3, and then one test to 14, well, then I know that's the one I need to treat. So that's kind of my plan. I'm picking up a nuke on Sunday, an Italian nuke from the Bee Whisperer, Peter Cowan in Hamden, Maine. It's pretty close to Bangor, 15 or 20 minutes. Install that at my grandparents' farm. I plan to split it in like probably 3 weeks ish. Get more splits. My goal is by the end of the year, not the end of the year, by late July, I'm going to pull my last round of queens. I should be able to sell, 12, 15, 20, somewhere in that range. And then I will combine all those mating nukes, 45 mating nukes into I think 12 hives ish. Maybe I'm getting one more, so it's 14. So I want 25 big hives. So I'll combine them into 11 full size 10 frame deeps. I'll probably give them at least 7 or 8 frames drawn, because that's typically what they need to make it through winter. In a 10 frame box. If they're in a smaller box, you don't need to. But I'll put them in a 10 frame box. I'll make up 11 of those, and then I want to make up 5 6 frame nukes. I've got 5 6 frame insulated Lysin poly nukes, and I'll use those to overwinter. And then also, I want to have 3 backup nukes. So by July 25th, I'll have requeened all my queens. I got 6 of Corey's virgins. 3 of them have gotten mated so far. Maybe more will. Hard to know. But I will requeen using those 3 this weekend. And then I'm getting in 6 Russian queens at the end of June or early July. And those are from Dan Conlon in Deerfield, Mass. So then I'll requeen those. And then any other queens that I haven't requeened, I will requeen with my own stock. And once I do that, my final round, all I have to do is make up those 11 10-frame deeps, as well as I need to create up 5 nukes to overwinter, and then I want to create 3 backup nukes. And so one thing that I really realized listening to Ian Steffler, Bob Binney, all of them, they all know they're going to have attrition. They're going to have losses even during the summertime. You're going to have some during the winter too, likely, but even during the summer. And so I want 25 hives and 5 nukes. But even with all young queens, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 may have issues. So I'm going to keep 3 backup nukes, 5-frame nukes full of a young mated queen and some brood. So any of those that have issues, I can just plug that nuke right in and be fine. If I don't have any issues, which theoretically could happen, but I would guess I would have at least one that needs help, I can sell off the queen because queens are always in really high demand in September. She'd be a well-mated queen. I can just pinch her and combine hives. And so what could be wrong with that? Like if I combine them, if I have a strong 4 or 5 frames of bees and then I've got a single deep and I combine it into that single deep, 1, I have extra comb for next spring because I'll rotate some frames out because you can't fit that many in a box. And then 2, I'm going to have so many bees in that. That's going to be one of my strongest hives. So as long as I treat those nukes and don't let the mites get out of control, they're a great asset to have for the rest of the season. So, I'll have 25 hives, 5 nukes, and then 3 nukes, 5 6-frame nukes and 3 5-frame nukes. And by the end of July, I will be sitting in very good shape, I hope. I wanted to pull honey around the 4th of July, but fingers crossed, this just delays the flow. It's not killing time that we're going to have in the flow because we've had so much rain. And so, Peter Callan hopes, as I do, that the flow will continue into late July instead of what it's typically happened the last few years, which is last year, I can remember the day that it ended. It was July 6th. So right after the 4th of July, that's when the flow ended. And we didn't get any honey flow really till, this spring. We didn't get much of a fall flow at all. I mean, a little bit, but not much. Anyway, so I'm going to hopefully pull honey in late June. My goal is off all of my production colonies that all have a drawn super, and one of them has 2, to get 2 supers of honey. And then all of my hives for splitting, I added supers. I want them to have space. If they get to drawing comb, great. If not, I don't care. If I make 2 supers per production colony, I'll still make 12 supers of honey, which is 360 pounds. And I have 25 honey supers. So I have enough where I can make 750 pounds of honey, 25 supers. I think that's good math. You guys can do it for me if you want and clown on me in the chat. But I think 750 pounds, I have enough buckets to do 600 pounds of harvesting. So no matter what happens, I have the equipment. I have everything ready to go. So I'm really good as soon as it's time to pull honey. I've got the extractor cleaned. I've got all my buckets cleaned. Just getting all those small tasks done while it's still rainy and I can't do anything. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of my outlook so far. The other thing that I haven't talked about that I'm going to do this weekend, I'm going to start my requeening. So most beekeepers don't do this because 1, queens are expensive, and 2, it's kind of heartless. I'll say that up front. But hives, queens eventually fail. That's just the reality of it. It's only a matter of time. Most queens don't last that long anymore. They used to last a lot longer than they do, but most queens if you get 2 years out of a queen, that's pretty freaking good. 2 solid years of laying. So what I think is I like to make a queen. Let's say I make a queen in 2023. She does great. She gets into winter. She goes through the winter. She's into 2024. She lays up a storm and she gets into the fall. And I don't requeen her. I decide not to requeen her. Then going into that winter, that hive has an exponentially higher chance of dying during the winter. Because if that queen runs out of sperm and cannot produce viable eggs anymore, or just dies for whatever reason, because queens die really young these days. I can talk about why I think that in a minute. So I'm increasing my chances of queens dying high or hives dying because of the queens if I send her into her second winter. So what I rather do is requeen her during her second year, second season, 1 year old. And if I do that, they're going to have a much better chance of making it through the winter and being strong in the spring. Not to mention that older queens have less QMP, queen mandibular pheromone. And so since they have less QMP, this means that they're more likely to swarm or be superseded, because the way that bees know they have a queen in the hive is they touch the queen, the QMP pheromone comes off of her body, they touch 2 or 3 other bees, and then they just keep following that pattern. So they all get some of the pheromone from the queen. And so an older queen has less QMP. And so because of that, like I said, she's either going to be more likely to be superseded, or what a lot of beekeepers find to be a big issue is once she gets into her third third year, second spring, typically. So she's 2 years old. She's already gone through at least one spring buildup, if not two. And she just has less QMP, and she's much, much likelier to swarm, because there's a lot of bees in the hive during swarm season. When there's so many bees in the hive, her QMP can't, there's not enough QMP for her pheromone to get all over the hive. And so that leads the hive to throwing queen cells. And so once those queen cells start, they'll either supersede her or they'll swarm her, or they'll swarm. They won't swarm her, they will swarm. And so they either swarm or supersede. And since it's the spring buildup portion of the year, those bees are going to swarm because there's so many bees in the hive. So that's why I requeen every year. And how I'm doing it this weekend, I've never done it before quite like this, but it's pretty self-explanatory. I got 3 pretty mediocre queens. They got maybe 3-4 frames of brood. Not much. They haven't drawn any comb this year. I'm pretty disappointed. I mean, I could keep them, but I've got extra queens. I was going to requeen them anyway, so might as well do it sooner rather than later. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out, maybe they're 2, 3, 4 frames of brood. I'm going to use it in splits, pinch the queen, and then I've got 3 nukes with VSH queens from Corey Stevens. They're hybrids. They're VSH on their mother's side, but they got mated here in Maine, so they got the hybridization, hybrid vigor. And I'm going to, just take those nukes over to that yard, pull out all their brood, split the hive, and just drop those nukes, those growing beautiful nukes, right into those hives. And what I plan to use is just to put her in a queen cage, because introducing queens with nukes has a very high success rate, right? But the only thing that I'm a little worried about is all the foragers will still go back to that hive. And the foragers are the bees, those old crotchety bees that are going to kill your queen. And so what I plan to do to counteract that is, if I put her in a queen cage, I let them get used to her for 4 or 5 days. I pull off the candy, they'll have her out within a few hours. And then I have no chance of losing that beautiful VSH queen that I paid for. So I'm going to take out 3 or 4 frames of brood, leave the rest of the drawn comb in, drop those other frames from the nuke into the hive, and just let that hive go. My guess is they'll be 2-3 times more productive now that I'm doing that. I don't need to split them again. So at this point, if those nukes grow out, they can even make me honey. So I can make 2-3 queens, or 2 or 3 supers of honey, 60, 90 pounds. Completely depends on how good the flow is. But that's my plan for requeening this year, or not requeening everything that way this year, but for this weekend, that's what I plan to do. So I had 4 blue queens last year, seen 1 blue queen so far this year, but I gave that hive to a friend. Yeah, I'm not saying they can't last long, but for me, if I'm making, 60, 70, 80 queens a year, it doesn't cost me anything more to make new ones. And my guess is, unless your queens are raised at a very high level and they're very high quality and they're made with a lot of drones with genetic diversity, even if they survive, 2020 I think was blue. Yeah, 2020 was blue. So you're saying 4 blue queens last year, so that's 2020, 21, 22. So they were in their 3rd year, and then you've had one. So then you lost 3 of them into 2023. So yeah, they can last a long time, but they're very much less likely to be productive as a young queen. Bob Binney says queens hit their peak productiveness about 6-ish months going after they start laying. So that's why here in Maine, we have a really good setup with that because I make a queen in June, right? She lays June, July, August, September, a little bit of October. That's like 4-ish months, maybe 4.5 months at most. Then she starts laying in February. She starts laying in March, 6 months. So she's hitting her absolute peak in April, May. She hits her peak in April, and she'll still be producing at a very high level for April, May, and June. So I'm getting the most productive time of the queen's life during during her spring buildup. So that's why Bob Binney really does like late mated queens. He's had a lot of success with that, and I mean, some of my queens are later, um, but they're not late for where I live. It's just they don't lay as long here, so they hit their 6 month around perfect. Here's a comment from Roy Prow. I'm setting up Randy Oliver's method this weekend for queen rearing in northern Michigan, shooting for 40 ripe cells on the first round if the dragonflies let them mate. Are you saying you want, can you clarify, Roy, you want 40 queens to go into mating nukes, or are you grafting 40 total? Just see if he responds here. Um, yeah, mating stuff. I got 16 out of 28. So that's very poor. That's like 50%. I generally get 75, 80, 85%. But it's just been crazy bad weather. So there's not a whole lot I can do. I found 4 virgins. Would have been, yeah, 4 virgins on Wednesday. So they could still get mated. And then I didn't see a virgin and I didn't see eggs in 2, 3, it would have been like 6 or 7. Yeah, 6 or 7 hives. I didn't see a virgin and I didn't see eggs. So there could have been a virgin queen that I missed or was out on a mating flight. And so potentially I could get 11 more queens back. I would guess I probably get 4, maybe 5. Sunday will be a great day for queen mating. It's going to be 70 degrees. Thanks for your clarification, Roy. He said they'll 40 cells into mating nukes. So I would graft, 45 plus. I don't know what your plans are, but that's what I'd suggest, to graft more than you need, because you just never know how many you're going to need or how many will take. Yeah, grafting, it takes a lot of practice for me. Most people pick it up really quickly, but for me, it took a while. I failed in 2020, but it wouldn't have been a big deal because even if the cells it took, I did not have nearly enough bees to do any work on. Just didn't have enough bees to make any good cells anyway. But 2021, I got some to take. The takes weren't good. 2022, I was like, oh, I'm really going to figure it out this year. And then I proceeded to just get awful takes every time and I have to graft twice. And then this year, I tried to help a friend graft when I was down south and I went to Arkansas. And I literally could not get a larva into another cup. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, I'd done this for 2 years and I couldn't even do it. I felt pretty embarrassed that I couldn't even do that. But I got over it. I practiced like 3 or 4 times before I grafted this year. And my first time, it did take me about an hour, but I grafted 60 larvae. So it was about roughly a minute per cup. And I got 57 because one of the cups fell out. 57 out of 59 takes. So I was absolutely ecstatic. I was so excited that I'd got such a great take. That I did the math and it was like 96% or something. So I was very excited about that. And I grafted 60 on Tuesday. It wasn't good weather, didn't have enough pollen, and I also forgot my queen cups at home. So I used some dirty ones, and Cayman Reynolds says you typically get worse takes when you use dirty queen cups when grafting. So I got a slightly worse take. I got 54 out of 60, but that's still like close to 90%, 88%, something like that. So I'm pretty pumped about that too. So I plan to go off in 6 minutes at 7:30 Eastern. If there are any questions, by all means, put them in the chat. Otherwise, I'll just talk random bee stuff because that's what I love doing, talking about bees. Trying to think anything else I'm doing this week. I want to test for mites using drones. I want to split, requeen, and then next Thursday and Friday, I am cleaning, not cleaning, caging, I think 8 queens or 12 queens. And so I have those for sale, 45 unmarked, 50 marked, um, and dropping in more queen cells. And I'm also selling what looks to be at least 10 queen cells. We'll see. Here's a comment from Dave Dwyer here. He said, better luck scooping up or top of the cell down? Do you mean the orientation of the frame? Dave, is that what you're saying? Because when I'm grafting, there's a couple of things I think about. The larva is like a little C. And so on the C, I'm trying to make a good C here. You want to scoop right here. You don't want to scoop where the larva doesn't touch itself. You want to scoop on the other side. Here you are. Grayson here. Including some of my hives with virgin queens, I have 12. Soon going to make 10 splits and we'll hopefully be at 22. Yeah, I mean, I'm going for expansion this year too, Grayson. I'm using mating nukes to do it. If you make 10 splits, though, you're probably not going to get 10 queens back. You probably get like maybe 8. And so then you'd be at 20, and then you'll probably lose some hives before winter. So I bet you'll be at close to 18 hives, which is still great. I mean, you maybe 6 times more hives than you had earlier this spring. Audrey W here. Are you going to get any new hives this year? I'm creating a bunch of hives. I have a bunch of boxes. It's just a matter of time, and I'm installing like a new hive called a nucleus colony on Sunday. I'll try to film that if I have time. How was the take on Corey Stevens virgins? I came in just as you were ending that comment. Oh, yeah, thank you. So Roy, the take was not good. One of them went to laying worker. That was my fault. They were queenless too long. Nothing to do with Corey. And then out of the other 5, 3 of them got mated, and then the other 2 I didn't see anything. But the weather's been really bad, so I'm going to check back on Monday. So the take so far is really like 3 for 5, so 60%. So it's not great. Grayson says he was at 5 at the beginning of the year. Yeah, so you're going to get close to increasing by 4 times as much. Good job, Grayson. Go crazy, man. I believe in you. So I'm going to close in the next 2-ish minutes. Anything else anyone wants to put in the chat, I'm happy to read it and go over any questions. And anything else I want to talk about here. Queens for sale, might have extra queen cells. Requeening, splitting, doing it all this weekend. Bad weather, just going to have to make it work. I'm going to feed a bunch. I bought 250 pounds of sugar last week and I already had 50. So I've already used 50 pounds because I'm feeding all my mating nukes because they can't fly and make any food. And I had one of them starve. It was out of 28, so it's not a huge loss, but I was still a little disappointed about that. I never had that happen. Trying to think. Honey flow, non-existent right now because it's raining and cold every day. But hopefully late next week, maybe we'll get some honey flow going, some warm weather in the 70s or higher, and that might just make the difference. And it also has to stop raining. That's important too, but you just never know. As Nathan Coleman of Duck River Honey says, it just wouldn't be any fun if we can control the weather, because that is a lot of what creates the variability in beekeeping. Bees definitely do, but also the honey flows and the weather. Got no control over that. You just kind of have to roll with the punches and figure it out as you go. Thanks, James. He said, love the videos. Keep it up. Great job. Thanks, James. I've been working hard. Got probably 4 or 5 different videos in the works. I'm trying to get 2 up a week. And I think I could gain a lot more traction using short videos. So I think I'm going to try to post at least 2 or 3 shorts a week, if not every day. So look forward to that. I've got 5 or 6 on my channel already, but I've kind of slacked off on the YouTube shorts in the past few weeks. But I think it'll make a difference for me. I've got 391 subscribers as of before the live stream at 7. And, hopefully we'll hit 400 in the next week or so, but making slow progress. It's not easy, but getting there. So I think I'm going to wrap it up here. It's few seconds from 7:30. Thanks everyone for coming on. I had a great time talking. Love talking to people in the chat. Love talking bees. There's nothing better. So thanks for all coming. Thanks for everyone for coming on tonight. I hope you have a great night, and I'll see you next week. Bye.